moving right along, I'm very excited about the next presentation. Crowdfunding is something that is poorly understood, but it's already a multi-million-dollar industry worldwide. And the question is whether crowdfunding can really be harnessed even for this particular market. And it's very poorly understood. In 2013, HSBC was already quantifying this industry to the tune of many billions, and I was quite surprised. So there's a lot of opportunity here. And our next speaker will be able to speak to that. He's the author of Property Going Global. He really has been looking into for a long time now into the global real estate markets. And he's the CEO of Wealth Migrate. We're going to ask Scott. We're running slightly behind time, but a fascinating concept that is of relevance to you as you think about new ways of doing business globally and South African born as well. Scott, welcome to the podium.
So thank you very much, Frederick. Frederick said that property was about two things. It was about solving problems and it was about people. So today, I want to share with you the future of real estate. In the next 45 minutes, I am going to explain to you something which is going to impact your life. Something which is going to have a massive impact on our industry and most importantly, on our planet. You have two choices. You can sit and listen and learn and possibly create or become a unicorn. Or you can be Robert Wayne. Now, many of you out there are wondering, what is a unicorn and who is Robert Wayne? So I want to play a little game. Let's for a moment pretend that we're not at a property convention. Let's pretend that we actually are in the 21st century, that we do believe in collaboration, and that technology can solve problems. I want to disrupt you a little bit. Would you mind all please standing up? Speak to the person next to you and ask them if they know what a unicorn is or who Robert Wayne is. Or, if there's no one next to you, take out your smartphone and Google it. Have we got any answers yet? So I'll take you out of your misery. A unicorn is a startup technology business that goes from naught to $1 billion in 7 years in valuation. And Robert Wayne is the third investor in Apple. He sold his 10% for $800. And today would be worth $46 billion if you'd known it then. I want to take you on a little journey and tell you a story. In '99, I had the privilege of traveling around Europe for 3 months in a camper van with some friends. We ran with the bulls, we danced in the European festivals, we drank beer at the beer fest. But I met a great friend of mine, an Australian boy, and he regaled us with stories of climbing climbing Everest and getting to base camp. In 2001, he became a great friend of ours and he said to us, I'm going up Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain in Africa. Now, we couldn't have an Australian going to the top of our mountain on our continent, so we said we've got to go along. We set ourselves a challenge. No matter who's actually climbed Kilimanjaro in this room? It's incredible that we live on a continent, and if you look around, how few hands. It amazes me how few people have special experiences in their life, and I challenge you on that. But this was us setting off, all excited, with lots of thoughts about what we were going to do. This is Adrian on the left. He's our experienced guide, because he's already been up Everest. This is us by day 3. We're getting high, it's getting cold, the air is really starting to thin. This is us on the morning of day 4, starting to get very, very cold. When you're a Durban boy, you are not built for this type of cold. If you can actually see the circumference here, that's how high up we were. Now the problem is at this stage, you're starting to have a lack of oxygen. This was the lunch on day 4. Now quite interesting here, that's Chifu, who was our guide. He was the man that made sure that we didn't go too fast, we didn't go too slow. He was the man that made sure we made every camp. He was the man who led our team to the top. But that was also the last time that we smiled on that mountain. My Australian friend got altitude sickness. People die on this mountain, and it got pretty tough.
Talk to the camera, boys. 100 meters from base camp. How do we all feel?
I was playing semi-professional rugby at the time. Day 4, I had quite a lot of energy and was still motivating my friends. That's where we slept at base camp. We had to go all the way up the back end of the mountain where the ice wasn't. We slept, you had to put your water bottles between your legs so that they didn't freeze. We set up at 1 a.m. in the morning, and off we went up with little lights in our heads. When the sun rose, it should have been a beautiful experience, but it wasn't. Adrian fell over and literally rolled from here to the podium. We had a major problem. Chief came to me and said, Scott, if we continue up this mountain, he will probably die. And the chances are you won't make it to the top of that mountain. However, if you leave him behind, I've got extra guys, I'll plan for this, and we can take him down. We had a dilemma. You never leave your friends behind, but equally, when you're clear on your goal, you make sure it happens. We pressed on. That was us walking up past the icebergs.
This is the speed which we managed most of the time. The beautiful glaciers in the background. We're about 50 odd meters from the top. In fact, these boys are actually flying.
You can see how slowly they're going. And in simple terms, by day 5, it was every man for himself. I was so tired, I was looking after myself and getting to the top. But I haven't come here to explain to you about how to climb Kilimanjaro. I've come here to answer 3 questions for you about the future of real estate. Firstly, I'm going to focus on the why. Secondly, I will focus on the how. And most importantly, I will then help you understand what you can do about it and what I'm doing about it. I want to take you on a little journey through history so that we can look at the lessons that we can learn from history, and most importantly, 3 of the most important events that have happened in our time. We had the Dark Ages from 600 to 1300. That was a time of fear. It was a time of control by the church and by the monarch. It was simple. There was no knowledge. The church and the monarchs had all the knowledge, and through fear they controlled the masses. And then in 1440, a guy by Gutenberg actually made the printing press. It led to the Renaissance. It led to information and knowledge being able to be replicated and to be spread to the masses. It led to the monarchs ultimately falling and democracy. It led to industrialization. It led to urbanization. But it also led to another problem. In 1894, the Times newspaper came out and said, there's a great horse manure crisis. If we continue on this road for the next 50 years, every street in London will be 9 feet covered in horse manure. Interesting enough, in 1898, they got together and they couldn't come up with a solution in New York. So they decided that civilization as they knew it was doomed. They already had the technology. Cars had been invented in 1798. In 1886, this car is actually from Carl Benz, which was one of the first cars, Mercedes-Benz. For those drivers of Mercedes-Benz, that's where it started. But what's really interesting is that they were very bespoke. They were only for the super wealthy. They were toys, they were gadgets, they were fun, and they were made individually for each person. Sounds similar to property? Henry Ford came along in 1908 and created the Model T Ford. He had mass production, he dramatically dropped costs, and because of that, it gave accessibility to the middle class. He changed American history. He changed the landscape of the 20th century. And most importantly, he empowered and revolutionized the transport industry. Now, a lesson some of you that are high-powered or in control might want to consider. In 1910, 4 companies out of the top 5 companies in America came from one industry. Can anyone tell me? That's right, it was the railroads. And interestingly enough, they could have bought Henry Ford for pennies. but they didn't. 100 years later, 80% of all transportation in America is done by trucks, pioneered by Henry Ford. And the railroads, the only value they truly have today is that they're the fastest direction between two cities, and they're flat, and so fiber optic cables, companies buy them to lay cables next to the railway lines. What can we learn from the railways? What it did, though, is it built us, and it built the middle class, and there was a huge increase in wealth around the world. But equally, there was an exponential dichotomy between the haves and the have-nots. It led to the wealth gap. In Davos last year in Switzerland at the World Economic Forum, they said that the wealth gap is the most critically biggest problem that we have to the sustainability of our planet. The top 85 people on this planet have the same wealth as the bottom 3.5 billion. We have the solution. It's the internet. The internet came about in 1995. It's changed a lot of things. It's made holidays cheaper. It's made airlines cheaper. It's made books cheaper. It's made music cheaper. But it's only really impacted the top end, the wealthy, and to an extent the middle class. But just like what happened with Henry Ford, the true change, the true catalytic event will be when it reaches the masses. When the masses have access to education, to health, and to wealth through their mobile phones. There's three major forces that are going to make this happen. The first one is economic. People no longer trust their government. They don't want to invest and trust other people. They want to be in control of their money. They want to invest locally. They want to diversify. In China last year, $15 billion left China to invest in either England, Australia, or America. The second is social. People no longer are about individualism and win at all cost. It's about collaboration and the greater good. And that is why social media has taken off around the world. And thirdly, it's about technology. Not only the impact of the internet, not only some of the legislative changes, but most importantly, the adoption. 10 years ago, 10 million people had access to the internet. Today, 2 billion. By 2020, 5 billion. It's leading to a complete change in power. There's been a power from the old world, one of castles, where you had a king that controlled everything and controlled the masses, to a new world of new power, of collaboration, of open source, of collective agreement, and getting things done for the greater good. What does this mean? And when you look at it on a graph, there's two examples. You've got the old power castles down the bottom, and you've got the new power crowds. This is the utopia of business in the 21st century. This is where all the billion-dollar companies are being placed. If you look in the old days, you had Britannica. Your parents had to be wealthy to give you access to knowledge and effectively. Now, all you've got to do is get on the internet and you've got Wikipedia. Another great example is Apple. Steve Jobs created something and it might become the first trillion-dollar company that we've known. But it won't last because Google and Samsung have open source. Apple is all about control. They control the software, they control the hardware, they even control the gadgets that go into it. Google and Samsung have open source, and they are killing Apple in market share around the world. In business, you need to focus on the crowds. So then you've got linear and exponential growth. And I highly recommend for all you businessmen and business ladies out there, you get a copy of this book, Exponential Organizations. It explains to you a new way that things are happening. There's a way that business has been done, and there's a way that business is now being done. And it's a difference in thinking between linear and exponential. Since the beginning of 2014, 87 companies, tech companies, have now reached the billion-dollar mark in less than 18 months. Where does that put us? Well, we've been in this stage here, where even in 99, 2000, 2001, where we had the dot-com bust and boom, exponential sits in the level of disappointment. It takes a long time. Exponential takes time to grow. Linear is the way of the future, it looks like. But there's a tipping point, and we've hit that tipping point. And now you're going to see exponential take over, and linear start to fall away. Just ask taxi operators, managers, how Uber has impacted them around the world in literally breakneck speed to the point where they couldn't even adjust or argue or change. What does it mean in property? In terms of online property, most of you will know Airbnb. It's now worth $10 billion in less than 6 years. It's disrupting hotels all over the world. Auction.com is worth $1.2 billion in 7 years, taking on auction houses and real estate agents. Next door, Zoopla, are literally taking on the estate agencies. So that leads us to, if you've been to Europe, you'll probably have flown on EasyJet, the orange airline, and a guy by the name of Stelios. So he saw the space, he saw this blue ocean in property, in an industry that has generally been very behind the times and has not adopted technology. So he created a company, Easy Property, and in simple terms, for those of you who want to understand, it's like private property. He raised $7.5 million, pounds, in September last year on a valuation of £66 million, or over $100 million, for a company that had been going less than 18 months. But what is fascinating is that he raised 20% of that through crowdfunding. There were two major reasons he did that. The first one is that it validated the valuation. And the second one, and much more importantly, he got branding and awareness that no money can buy all over the UK and Europe. Everyone knows about Easy Property, and it's just a startup. So that leads us to the big idea, which is crowdfunding. And what is crowdfunding all about? In simple terms, it is people coming together, investing together, having the power of the crowd, and using technology. The top consulting firms came out for 2015. This is not just a trend or a fad. They see this as one of the biggest disruptors of this year. A lot of you have probably heard of Kickstarter. A lot of you are sitting there thinking, what's this got to do with property? It's a bunch of kids putting in a little bit of money, helping out with little projects. There was this guy, his name was Ryan Grepper. He wanted to create a cool box. In the old days, he would have gone to the bank, he would have said to them, I've got a better idea for a cool box. They would have said, give me a business plan, what's your track record? And I pretty much guarantee he would have been declined. But he went to Kickstarter.
That's the sound of a cooler coming down off the shelf. It's the sound of imminent fun. So why haven't cooler designs changed in almost 50 years? Boring coolers are boring, break easily, and are a pain to get to and from your destination. I wanted a cooler that was really well built, yet had so much fun built into it that I would look for excuses to get outside and enjoy it. So, I created the Coolest. The Coolest is a complete redesign of what a cooler can be. First, you've got this 18-volt rechargeable blender. You don't realize the number of places you can really go for a blended cocktail or smoothie until you've got a blender built right into the lid. You're already carrying around a cooler full of ice and tasty beverages. Why not blend them up and become a summertime hero anytime, anywhere? And what's a party without music? The Coolest comes with a removable Bluetooth speaker that connects to any smartphone to wirelessly stream music from up to 30 feet away. It's amazing where speaker technology has come in the last few years. You can skip songs and adjust the volume right from your phone, and this little box can really put out some sound. And since you've got that 18-volt battery for the blender, why not get the most out of it? Maybe your camera battery is low, or maybe you have an iPhone and want to use it after 2 in the afternoon. Recharge your gear wherever you are with this waterproof USB charger. The party doesn't stop just because the sun goes down, and you shouldn't have to freeze your fingers searching endlessly for your favorite drink. The Coolest has waterproof LED lights embedded in the lid so you can easily find what you're looking for with the push of a button. One of the biggest hassles of outdoor fun is hauling your gear back and forth from the car, and I've experimented with various ways to solve the problem. I love coolers with wheels, but I hate that they refuse to help carry anything else. The Coolest has you covered with lock and tie down bungees, so you can carry all your stuff in just one trip. And what about getting organized to go out in the first place? The Coolest helps out almost like a picnic basket to make sure you always have a few key essentials with built-in storage for reusable plates, cutting boards, and this awesome rust-proof ceramic knife. Plus, the removable divider gives you a whole new level of flexible packing options. You can pull the drain plug on one side, and your Coolest can stay dry and cool just like your refrigerator. Say goodbye to soggy sandwiches. Regular cooler tires are flimsy and sink right into the sand. We designed the coolest wheels to be twice as wide to roll twice as easily. And how many hours of your life have you lost looking for a bottle opener? My grandpa's cooler had one, and so does the coolest. I create products for a living, and to manufacture the coolest, I've lined up a world-class sourcing company with years of experience making top-shelf products, and they're standing by to coordinate all stages of production and logistics. This will make sure you not only get your coolest on time, but it's the highest quality coolest we can possibly make. As you can see, we have our design finalized and ready for the big leagues. But to move to the next stage requires expensive tooling to pay for all the coolest parts, and the capital to buy our components at a volume discount. If you were to go out today and buy all the gear we packed into the coolest, it would cost over $500. Well, by backing this Kickstarter campaign for just $180, you can be one of the first people in the world with a cooler that's actually cool.
This campaign had 62,642 backers, and he raised $13 million. No need for the banks. But what's great is that he had proof of concept before he even went to market. He's got the money in the bank, and he's got 62,000 clients waiting for their cool box. What could you do with property with that type of insight and that knowledge? What about giving? There's the Global Learning X Prize. We've got 1 billion people on this planet that are illiterate. 2/3 of them are women, 250 million of them are children. We need 1.6 million teachers this year alone to stop that getting worse. It's impossible. The only way to do it is by teaching people through gadgets. A warrior, a Maasai warrior in the desert now has more access to information if he has a cell phone than Bill Clinton did as American president in 1995. The X Prize through Indiegogo is a $10 million prize to help technologists create technology to take a kid from illiteracy to literacy within 18 months. I personally invested $250 in this because my 3-year-old will get access to this technology before it goes mainstream. But crowdfunding is not new. In 1868, Pulitzer actually got 300 businessmen to create the base for the Statue of Liberty. Most of us in Africa know about Stokvels, the synagogue, or in China, Biway. But there's 3 fundamental principles as to why these old, traditional, ancient methodologies work. The first one is trust. In that environment, people know each other. In an online environment, how can we trust each other? And the word is social proofing. In 2003, I love rugby, and I lost £11,000 buying tickets for the Rugby World Cup on eBay. I thought to myself, I better learn this pretty quickly. Now when I buy my tickets, I like to buy off anyone, but someone like this, 7104 Leslie. They've done 974 transactions with 100% positive feedback. That is their digital reputation or their digital track record. And it's more important to them than, stealing money from me in one deal. What about Alibaba? We all knew we could get stuff cheaper in China, but until Alibaba came along, how did we know we could trust people? So things that have long tails, like delivering stuff or property, they've actually brought in a third party that comes in and verifies. It's a form of social proofing, but with time, they will get real social proofing. The second one is transparency. And this is really, really important, because when you consider that people, when they work in Stokvels or in the synagogue, they know what is happening, they know who's doing what, they know the fees, they know the costs. In the online environment, if you take a platform like ours, you can literally log in, you can select your investment online, you can do the entire transaction, including e-signatures and everything else online, and most importantly, you can manage your entire portfolio. You can see everything, the costs, the fees, the returns. You have true transparency. And lastly, interests being aligned. If I've learned one thing, if I get married and I'm marrying for love and someone's marrying for money, it's not going to work. If we go into business and I want to live on the beach and my partner wants to work really hard and create a big business, it's not going to work. Why do we think in business and in property that we can do deals where our interests are not aligned? So what does this mean for real estate? Well, unfortunately, the current real estate model is broken. I would refer to Joe Soap, the investor who's looking to invest in real estate, but the friend of mine, Neil Peterson's actually in the room, so that's Neil's photo. But Neil wants to invest in real estate, and if he goes through the traditional method, he's got to go through a number of hurdles that his money is diluted in fees before he gets to actually invest. There's no trust in the system. 76% of people in America are concerned about their future, and only 1/4 trust the financial system. What about transparency? Kura mentioned yesterday on this stage that the current funds and REITs, 50% is about the property fundamentals, and 50% is about financial alchemy and working with the balance sheet. And lastly, what about alignment? When you look at the syndications, they're aligned to earn all their money up front. And so therefore, they just want to do as many deals as they possibly can. Some of the funds earn their money by managing assets, and therefore their primary goal is to just get more assets under management. Is that aligned with the investors' long-term interests? And if people argue with me and disagree, let's look at the results. For the last 100 years, 49% of the world's wealth has been held in property. 12.9% of the world's population actually has access to property. And of that 12.9%, less than 1% of people in the Western world, Australia, England, and America, actually retire wealthy. The system is broken. So let's look at the opportunities. On the left-hand side of a graph, you've got adoption, and on the bottom, you've got growth. Online education has completely exploded. You can now go on Stanford, one of the best universities in the world, and do any of their courses online, and you only have to pay if you want to get the qualification. In September 2013, the SEC and the American government passed the Jobs Act. That allowed people to now invest in equity, in businesses, and in property. And that has basically spurned a huge growth, but not so much adoption yet. If I remind you, this is utopia for business of the 21st century. And what's ultimately happening, and one of the models that we do, is that we believe that our model is only about two things. One is we educate people, and the other one is that we provide solutions. And so through education, you build trust, and you increase the adoption. But that is the focus with the crowds. In simple terms, and on a diagram, this investor here wants to invest in real estate. Rather than being diluted by multiple middlemen, they can go online, they can get access to some of the best education in the world. Dr. Dolph DeRoos is our president, author of New York Times bestsellers, and we want people to be educated so they can make the right decisions. But ultimately, through the portal, they have access directly to the opportunities. Let's look at a real example. So in 2009, 2010, I had the privilege of traveling to Australia with two South African property billionaires. And we were buying retail shopping centers, student accommodation, and healthcare facilities. The buy-in was $5 million. And so unfortunately, I went along for the ride to learn, but I couldn't participate. Through equity crowdfunding, this is a building that we bought in Atlanta recently. $16 million building, portfolio of 7 buildings. With $50,000, I could participate and partner with some of the best quality partners in some of the best quality deals that could be found. The best part is that people from all over the world could also participate, and clients invested from 5 different continents. When they were given the opportunity to reinvest, over 80% of them actually reinvested. The stats came out recently. We're now the 10th biggest in the world. A bunch of boykies from South Africa. But we're the only ones that are doing it cross-border and internationally. And this is in an environment of a very high-growth industry. It's reached $1 billion last year. It's expected to be $2.5 billion this year and $250 billion by 2020. I highly recommend getting access to that report. And I'm sure we can make a plan with SAPOA that you can get access to it. But let's look at what is happening in America. Fundrise is acclaimed as probably one of the biggest and the best in America. They only help Americans invest in American property. But what's really interesting is the institutions have got behind them. Silverstein Properties, one of the most respected property companies in America, has actually invested in this company. Renren, the social media company from China, has invested. They are offering people the ability to invest in the World Trade Center for as little as $5,000. They've got a very heavy backing of real estate experience, and they're using that money to buy and underwrite deals and then retrospectively crowdfund them. But it's not all good news. There's equally a big site there, and I'm not going to mention their name. I presented with them at MIPIM. And these guys, they're lovely people, but they've never bought or sold a house in their life. They rent their own house that they live in right now. They crowdfunded a Hard Rock hotel. And what worries me is that what's going to happen when the economy changes? Do they know anything about tenants or TI, or what to do when the tenant moves out and when the economy changes? I believe that we're going to see a space in this that's going to be very similar to what happened in 99-2000. There's going to be high growth, high opportunity, but equally there will be a market correction. And those without a blend of technology, but most importantly real estate experience, are going to fall by the wayside. But the Amazons, the eBays, the Facebooks, and the Googles, the ones with true understanding, experience, and business fundamentals will come through. And so for you as investors, one of the things that we focus on is safety. Our chairman, Henny Besadenhout, has literally been in property since 1992, medical property. He's currently building 14 hospitals here in South Africa. And I don't tell you that other than to tell you that for us, there's a difference between, as an investor, looking at a flea market and Harrods. Flea markets sell stalls and make money out of selling stalls. And you might get good stuff and you might get bad stuff. We believe that this is a technology of the future, but it's going to be a rocky road. And so we've chosen to go with Harrods. Safety, quality, and less diversity. What does it mean for the suppliers out there, people with properties that want to go out and reach the investors? Well, let's look at social proofing. If we take the Hilton Hotel that's next door here, 5 years ago they got clients through two things: their brand, and by getting travel agents to fly over, stay in their hotel, and then when you and I walked into the travel agency's office, they said, go stay in that hotel, it's really nice. Today we have TripAdvisor. 5 years ago, it didn't impact Hilton at all whether or not they were on TripAdvisor. Today, it has a dramatic impact as to whether or not they will get clients and their bottom line. When it comes to social proofing in property, it doesn't impact you at the moment. I understand that. But it will in 5 and definitely 10 years. And my question is, it's your digital reputation, it's your digital track record. Why wait? A second thing is that if you think I've gone completely stark staring mad, why not trust some of the biggest brands in the world? They're using crowdfunding for co-creation and a bottom-up economy. They are going out and reaching out to their clients. They want to touch their clients. They want to communicate with their clients. They want to understand what their clients want and what their clients want to invest in. And by building it together, they get much more client involvement, much more client interaction, and much more participation in the long term. As property developers, investors, would we not want people to participate on the front end, to invest in the community, to invest in the building, to give you peace of mind that you actually are going down the right route and building something the community wants? And then equally, letting them participate in the upside. It dilutes your risk massively, and it gives you a huge amount of upside for the future. And if you remember what Easy Property did, it also gives you branding and awareness It is unprecedented, and you can't buy in terms of basic advertising. So I believe the older I get, people that don't understand what they're talking about tend to really try and overcomplicate things to make it sound complicated so that people think that they're clever. But the truly wise people that understand their space talk about simplicity. For me, it's about common sense. When we look at the internet and the way it's disrupted multiple industries, it's cut out the middleman. It's reduced the costs. It's increased the efficiencies. And most importantly, it's increased the accessibility. I'm sure that if we opened the floor, you could probably give me 100, if not 1,000 reasons why this won't work. But I'll ask you one simple question. Why will real estate be different from every other industry? You've got two choices the way I see it. One is to keep doing what you've always done and expect different results. Or the other is to embrace technology, to learn from history, to learn from the 3 dramatic events that I've already explained with you today, and to follow what another South African is doing in changing the world. Elon Musk is out there revolutionizing the transportation industry again, the space industry, and more recently, the energy industry. The greatest thing about the 21st century is he's getting spectacularly wealthy in the process. But more importantly, he's having a huge impact on the planet. Something we are super passionate about is the wealth movement. It's a movement to create a better and more sustainable planet for all. And it's within our reach. It's our responsibility. There's 3 parts to the wealth movement. The first one is Lemonade Day. And I truly believe that the greatest prospect we've got of a future in South Africa is by empowering the children of South Africa. I came across a concept in America called Lemonade Day, where they train 250,000 children how to become businessmen and to learn the skills of entrepreneurship through running a Lemonade Day stand. And I thought to myself, wow, that is incredible. Why do our children not have that same opportunity? So I brought it to South Africa, and we're launching this year. And each kid gets a little pack like this that literally takes them through the 14 lessons of business. Most of the successful businessmen out there will agree it's a recipe. Anyone who gets the recipe knows how to bake a cake. And my philosophy when it comes to children, you only need to give them 2 things. Give them self-belief and teach them how to make 1 rand, $1, €1, £1. No school, no university, no government, no boss can ever control them. They're in control of their future. The second leg is empowering women. Hilda Lunderstedt is a shareholder and board member, highly successful South African business lady. She's very passionate about empowering women. When you look at it, I've already given you the stats. 2/3 of women of the illiterate people on this planet are women. Secondly, the financial industry is a very male-dominated industry and very difficult for women to both get into, to understand, and to create wealth. With collaboration of crowdfunding, it now becomes possible for them not only to get the self-belief, but to get the access to wealth and equality. And lastly, I've spoken a lot today about the inequality and unfortunately the system that has been set up for failure. But there's no reason it needs to continue. Because just like with Henry Ford, we are reaching that tipping point where technology can provide the answers once we reach the masses. 12.9% of the world has access to the wealth effect of real estate. The very cars that you drive, the very schools you went to, the very universities you attended, were probably because your parents owned property. And yet, 6 billion people out of 7 billion people on this planet do not have that same opportunity. The mission of the wealth movement is to empower 1 billion people by 2020 with the wealth effect of real estate. And when you ask me how, I truly believe it's going to be possible soon to get it down to $1 per person per investment. Imagine the impact that will have, particularly in the emerging world. So I want to leave you with 2 lessons. I had a privilege of spending a week with Richard Branson on Necker Island last month because of the wealth movement. There were 20 other equally successful entrepreneurs, and I realized something very, very important as a South African. We think too small. We often give ourselves a lot of excuses and reasons as to why we don't do stuff. And we also tell ourselves that we can't have an impact on the planet. And yet these people, they dream. They dream big. They dream about whatever they want in their life. They dream about whatever they want for the planet and what we can create for a better planet. They get very, very clear what the top of the mountain looks like. They understand the why. And then they work backwards. And all of them have it. The problem with most people is that they focus on the what and the how. And they get confused. They're not sure where the top of the mountain is. They walk round and round the base and any path will do, and they get very frustrated. When you're clear as to what the top of the mountain looks like, you will get there. And through all our trials and tribulations, that was us and our party at the top of Kilimanjaro. I use that photo quite regularly whenever Australia beats us at cricket or rugby. I want to share with you and just finish off. I know that a lot of what I've said today is probably overwhelming. I know I've given you a lot of numbers, and I know I've said a few things that I guarantee you are going to shake your conscience. I ask you to bear with me. If you're going to climb a mountain, it takes time. It takes planning. It takes a guide. But I promise you one thing. If you're clear about what the top of the mountain looks like, and you're prepared to take the first step, you will get there. I welcome you into the 21st century and what technology can do. I really want to thank Amelia, SAPOA, and all of you for allowing me the time to share something that I'm very, very passionate about and what I truly believe is my purpose on this planet. And as you walk out of these doors to go for lunch, I leave you with one thought, and one thought only. If you're prepared to take the time to truly understand this technology, if you are prepared to take the time to understand this shift in power, and most importantly, if you are prepared to take the time to understand the difference of exponential, then I welcome you to join me in looking forward to a future of abundance. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Scott. And somewhere in London, Richard Branson is giving a presentation saying, I had the privilege of spending a week with Scott Picken. I also love stereotypes being defeated. It's one of those things that gives me a kick in life. A rugby player with a purpose, who's clever, who speaks well, and who cares about women and children. Are you sure you played rugby? I want to see the photos. Can we give him another round of applause?
I'm probably like most of the Sharks players. I'm a bit confused with that.
Thank you, Scott. That was fascinating. We could have. I've got a gift for you. Or if you can carry it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. That kind of disruptive thinking is what's needed. And I do applaud you for the creativity of your presentation, the thoughtfulness. And I think crowdfunding has often been seen as something quirky. I've no doubt that everyone in this room will probably be chewing of that over lunch.